Good evening. Today is actually All Souls Day, and we live in a day and age when offense is common as breathing. Criticism is running rampant. I remember sitting at a traffic light. When the light turned green, my car wouldn't move. The people behind me were honking their horn. I even had my emergency flashers on. It meant nothing to those as they were cursing at me. I wasn't trying to be inconveniencing to anyone. I got stuck. Then I remembered how many times I might have said some unkind words when I encountered people driving too slow, sitting at the lights, or even cutting me off. Maybe they have a reason. Maybe they are only kidding. Maybe they're just being human. We're imperfect beings who often make mistakes. To love is to move outside of the black hole of one's egotism, to resist the force that compels one to assume the attitude of self-protection, which means forgiving even those who honk their horns and curse at you. Love is not easily offended or critical. Everyone makes mistakes. No one is always right or knows everything. Well, maybe Mom. Well, we're all a work in progress. The essence of love is to give. Give all. Give without bringing harm to a loved one. Giving all that you've got to give can persuade the loved one to accept love. The more you progress in love of neighbor, the more your love of God will increase. Loving your neighbor means receiving God's love. Loving your neighbor means loving ourselves as well, which can include letting go of negative patterns or beliefs and accept our flaws as part of who we are, all God's children. Practice gratitude for good things rather than focus on the negative. Loving your neighbor means showing grace. God has called us to participate in the life of the Blessed Trinity. Sanctifying grace, or habitual grace, is a stable disposition which perfects the soul through the infusion of the virtues, faith, hope, and charity, which we are made children of God by adoption to act by his love. Loving your neighbor means acting with compassion. Compassion does something. A heart that's moved by compassion cannot sit idly by while watching your neighbor who needs something. In praying for others day and night, we can learn through the art of prayer the gift of loving others. If we cannot help them in any other way, the true love of our own tender heart can be given by just praying for them. Loving your neighbor means looking out for their well-being, so pay attention. If you notice that they need something, then help. Loving your neighbor means serving them. Serving from the heart can be as simple as being kind to someone. Even our very own church's namesake, St. Elizabeth, had a growing love for God that led her to want to sacrifice for God. St. Francis, whom she knew, wrote letters to the brothers and sisters of penance, which St. Elizabeth was a member. He urged them to follow the two greatest commandments. Elizabeth had humility and love of poverty. She and her husband Ludwig founded and endowed hospitals in 1223, now called St. Elizabeth's Plan, when the original hospital foundation was unearthed in 2006, northeast of Wartburg Castle. She would take care of the sick as she saw them as a child of God. She would bathe the sick and put them to bed, bind their sores, and prepare their medicine. Loving your neighbor also means sharing in the joys and the sorrows of love and of compassion. You who suffer because you love, love still more. To die of love is to live by it, and those who are blessed with grace as a gift from God, who comfort the sick. My closest seminarian friend one day begged me to take him to get that second COVID shot, for then it was mandatory, and he didn't have a car. I would always lend him my car anytime he needed it, no questions asked. But he was too sick to drive. He was feverish, cold, and shaking. I begged him not to get it, but he was worried about not being allowed back into the seminary if he didn't get the second shot, and the semester was almost finished. I said, "They're not supposed to give it to you if you're sick and shaking." Later that day, his temperature was as high as 104, and I was going in and out of his room so often that the formators were even questioning me on what was happening. For I nursed, fed, washed his clothes and bed sheets, forced him to shower. I made his Vietnamese tea his way and lobster. Long story short, he loved fishing, grew up between two rivers, ate mostly seafood, so you get the picture. Not to miss his Sunday obligation, I took him to Mass that Sunday. We sat in the last row, as all good Catholics do. The one thing he asked of me, "Bobby, will you always pray for me?" I said, "Sure." As we prayed the rosary by his bedside to Our Lady of La Fang statue, after we finished praying, he said Our Lady said he would make it through his COVID ordeal. He did get better the next week. He never returned back to the seminary, for he was hit by a drunk driver and died immediately in the streets of New York. Loving your neighbor means to take my hand and lead me to salvation. Take my love, for love is everlasting. And remember the truth that once was spoken. To love another person is to see the face of God. Amen. His sister sent me a picture this morning for All Souls Day. That's his mom placing flowers on his grave.